Hello and welcome back to another episode of Queerpreneurs Unleashed. I'm your host, Dustyn Baulkham. My pronouns are he, him, and I get the pleasure of interviewing some pretty rad 2S LGBT plus entrepreneurs. Today we are recording from the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwepemc people, also known as Kamloops, our first one actually outside of Kelowna, and thrilled to have Jess here with me today.
Hello.
Thanks for being here, Jess.
Thank you for being in my space.
Yeah, it's great. I know you're actually probably one of the first 4 or 5 people that had submitted their expression of interest, and so it's great that we got outside of Kelowna from the beginning, and we just hadn't had it made out yet. So thrilled to be here.
Well, Kamloops is always happy to have rebellious unicorns in any capacity.
We love being here. Kamloops is always very good to us.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about yourself. We're going to talk about the business later, but I want to talk about you personally first.
My name is Jess. My pronouns are she, they. I'm 37 years old, and I own and operate a small gift shop in the North Shore of Kamloops called House of Misfit, and I run a local craft event called Misfit Night Market.
Awesome. Thanks.
And other events.
Are you an 86 baby too?
I am 86.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, us 80s babies, we age differently.
Yeah, exactly. And have you always resided in Kamloops, or how long have you been here for?
I have not.
Okay.
So I'm originally from Kitimat, BC, the unceded territory of the Haisla people. And I moved to Kamloops in 2004 for university. I lived here for about 5 years. And then I lived in Lethbridge, Alberta, and then Toronto, Ontario, London, Ontario, before returning in 2018.
So tell me a bit about your coming out story.
So being an 86 baby, and growing up in a small town, I didn't really know that queer people existed for a long time. This is pre-Soji. This was before, any of the language. You Ellen coming out as gay. I had a friend in high school that everyone kind of knew was gay, but he didn't come out until well after high school. I was very much kind of raised within that compulsory heterosexuality, like many people our age. And so I actually didn't really start to kind of realize my own sexuality probably until I moved to Alberta. Okay. So I was maybe 23, 24. I didn't come out until I was about 26. I identify as bisexual. Technically, I'm actually pansexual, okay. Because hearts not parts, but I like the colors of the bi pride flag better, which is kind of an arbitrary reason.
We don't have to pick one, right?
Yeah. So that was kind of the first realizing I think I'm bisexual. I didn't really come out to my dad, but my dad's just old school Portuguese. It's not that he's closed-minded or bigoted. He's actually both my parents are pretty liberal. But that's just not really a conversation I wanted to have with my dad.
Okay.
But I did come out to my mom over the phone. When I realized oh, hey, I like girls too. And she was supportive, very hesitantly supportive. Yeah. Her thing, and the thing that many people who are bisexual or pansexual, especially bisexual, will hear is, oh, it's just a phase. Right. So that was kind of the thoughts from her. And then she was also worried too that life was going to be harder for me as a queer person. So she didn't really know what to say to it. And we didn't really talk about it after that. Right. Until I started dating a girl and then told her, and she was just kind of again, I don't know what to say to this. And I was like, well, I came out to you 4 years ago, so...
It shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah. Just because I've dated guys since then doesn't change anything. Exactly. And now I kind of my joke is I'm attracted to women because women are beautiful. Yeah. Non-binary people are beautiful. And I'm attracted to men because sexuality is not a choice.
Right.
So, and then as I go older, I've actually kind of like, and the language has evolved, you know, then I started learning about like non-binary identities. At the same time, when I was living in Lethbridge, one of my good friends came out as trans. And I was actually really happy with the way that like I responded to that, being not educated and not like really knowing about trans people. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Like
nothing. And then that's kind of around the time I started to also learn about gender identities too. So for me, I guess I'm definitely on the non-binary spectrum. I've never really felt entirely female, but I'm also not entirely bothered by being perceived as female either. I love my body, but in my brain, it's just kind of like I feel like I float somewhere in the middle.
Right.
And then I also identify as demisexual or gray sexual.
Okay.
I don't.
Are demi and gray the same? Like I saw gray in your submission. Mm-hmm. I've heard of demi, but gray is a newer one that I haven't.
Yeah. So my understanding with demisexuals typically don't experience sexual attraction until they've kind of like formed a bond or a connection with someone.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be like a romantic connection, but basically like I got to kind of know you a little bit.
Right.
I don't look at people when I meet people. Like I can look at someone and be like, this person is objectively attractive, right. But not like this person's hot and I want to take them home with me.
Right. Totally.
My brain doesn't function like that. And it can be really funny being amongst friends that are like literally horny all the time because I can't really relate to it. But and gray sexual is kind of like, my understanding is it's more, you know, you don't really experience that attraction except maybe in specific circumstances. Okay. So, you know, because there's also been times where, you know, I have felt attraction to someone and I don't really know them.
Okay.
But like, I'm just kind of like, oh my God, what's that feeling?
Yeah.
Like, what is this?
Draw.
I don't even know this person. Like,
yeah.
why do I want to make out with them? So I kind of feel like, I mean, for me, everything's a spectrum. So I kind of feel like gray, demi, I'm kind of like somewhere in between there as well.
Right. And I think I recall seeing something else under how you identify. Was there another?
Oh,
in what you submitted?
I guess like in terms of my gender identity,
that's what it was.
Did I put hard femme? Because I feel like that might have been something I would have put.
I can cheat. I have it right. Oh, gender apathetic.
Oh, yes. Gender apathy. I guess it's kind of more like a tongue-in-cheek sort of thing. It's like I don't really like care about gender. Like to me, like my attitudes towards gender, again, being like a spectrum. You know, if you perceive me as a female, that's fine. I'm not a girl, but right. You can call me a girl.
Like, hey, girl.
Hey, girl, hey. And, like, I am comfortable with my body. I don't have any body. I mean, I do have insecurities like everybody does, but, sure. Like, I love my boobs. I love my lady bits.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any sort of body dysmorphia or anything like that. But to me, it's just kind of like, I don't really give a shit about gender. It's a social construct and it's in our heads. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think people should just be able to choose to define it however Absolutely. They feel for them.
I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of like cis men on so far, so it's good to have some other viewpoints and other experiences and identities and all that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was going through my head when you were talking about like how you shared with your mom, it kind of made me think, so kind of like loves you no matter what, but is maybe unsure how to support you. Is that would that be accurate-ish?
I think that could definitely be, you know, and my parents come from a different time.
Yeah, for sure.
But then, you know, once I dated a girl a couple years ago, and we dated for like a year and a bit. And she was very much part of the family.
Right.
Like, you know, as soon as it came time to like actually actively supporting me, it's like, oh, if Jess is dating a girl or Jess is dating a guy, like, doesn't matter to them. They know they're not getting kids either way, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
My parents got their grandkids from my brother. They're not getting any from me.
Exactly. Very
so
bad.
I get it. I love being an uncle or a gunkle.
Yeah.
And that's what I was lying, because they start screaming. I'm like, nope. Done.
You can have them back.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with this. Christmas, I was like, oh.
Yeah, we had a house full of kids at Christmas, and I was just like sneaking off to my room to go vape and like hide for a minute.
Like, Chaz is my dog. Do you need to go outside? We need a break? I know it's really freaking cold because we're in Calgary and it was that cold stretch, but let's get outside.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that. Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. And everyone's coming out story is very different, and we've had quite the variety on people we've interviewed so far. And yeah, I think I did the calculation. This is our 11th episode tonight that we're recording. So,
well, and the kind of funny thing is too, is like, even when it comes to my own gender identity, that's like, I'm still kind of figuring that out. Like,
when it flows, it doesn't.
And it ebbs and it flows. And sometimes I feel very woman, but other times I just feel like, and maybe it's partially because like I've grown up in the punk scene a lot. So like in terms of like my attitudes to what like I think womanhood is, like to me, I like look at that and I'm kind of like, well, that's not me. So like I'm still kind of like figuring that out. But I mean, my gender doesn't really play much into my day to day beyond supporting other people.
Yeah. Awesome. And so I want to spin things over to the business. Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned it in your introduction, but tell me a bit more about, because for those who don't know, we're actually in her store right now doing the interview. We're literally doing this right before we have bingo tonight across the street. So I love how close it was. It was very convenient for us, that's for sure.
Yeah, worked out beautifully.
Yeah.
So House of Misfit is kind of nestled in the heart of the Tranquil corridor on Kamloops' North Shore. I have a cute little location anchored with other businesses like Bright Eye Brewing. There's 5 Bean, the coffee shop that's like just over there. I got the lemonade stand and at my neighbors, Eddie's European Bistro, who feed me very frequently.
Perfect.
They also deliver, which is nice. They deliver to me.
Right over. I mean, it's easy to walk next door.
Yeah, they just come next door.
Yeah.
And it's an artisan gift store. So I support local and regional artisans, as well as independent companies from around Canada and the U.S. Mainly Ontario, having my Toronto roots kind of a little bit. I try to kind of bring some of that energy into the space as well. Because Kamloops is growing and it is changing and the demographics changing too. So I think having those city folk come in and bring their visions just enrich the culture. And then I also organize a pop-up market called the Misfit Night Market, which is, I kind of pitch it as a craft show at night for weirdos. It's mainly, I focus kind of on sort of like punk, witchy, queer, and that it's kind of like an intersection of all my identities, but other people share in parts of those identities as well. And Kamloops is full of weirdos, and we have nowhere to go. So
I feel like most communities we have like that weirdo group that people like term, and it's just
small but mighty.
Totally. I mean, and actually, it's funny because when we were driving up tonight, Ellen and I were talking about there's one of the local performers just announced their, I guess, sub-brand or whatever you want to call it, called Queerdo.
I saw that. Yeah.
So Calora's been talking about it for quite a while that they were going to do it, because I know they did it in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And so now they're looking at doing it more in Kelowna. I don't know where else they're planning to take it, but
yeah, that's very cool. Yeah. Queerdos are my people. Yeah. Queerdos and punks, definitely.
Perfect. Love it. Tell me a bit about what inspired you to start the business.
Oh, geez. That is like, well, when I've been a maker probably since 2012. And then I did like a few craft shows and stuff in Toronto and was always kind of like involved in like, creative spaces. I always kind of joke like the one time you'll see me out is like at a punk show.
Right.
So I've always kind of been surrounded by people who are very creative and very driven and ambitious and try to do their own things. I worked for a shop in Toronto that was like a hat maker, like a millinery, called Lilliput Hats. And actually, yeah, Toronto's probably a big inspiration for a lot of things because I was able to see people just going for it. One of my housemates, he plays in a band called the Flatliners, wearing their shirt because they're my favorite band. One of the guys in the band, his partner's sister, opened up a shop called Cry Wolf. And I remember going to their grand opening and seeing the Flatliners did like a little acoustic set. And I just remember being like completely amazed by like, you can do this? Like, you can just do this. And then it kind of, I ended up moving to London, and then I started a punk rock flea market there. And then that was kind of where I was just like, man, it would be so cool to just like have a shop, like a permanent space for people like that to sell. London didn't turn out so well for me, so I got the hell out of there. And then when I came back to Kamloops, I kind of thought about, I was like, oh, I should get back into, like, after a couple years, I was like, I should get back into it. Like, I miss it. I miss organizing markets. I miss that kind of creative energy and being surrounded by other people that are like makers and creators. But I didn't know how good the punk scene was in Kamloops, so I was like, I should maybe broaden it a little bit. So instead, I was like, okay, Misfit Night Market came to me after I smoked a little bit of weed.
A lot of my best ideas came when I used to drink.
Absolutely.
A glass or two of wine.
Yeah. And then I actually, a local business owner, Mitch from Redbeard, which is a restaurant just up the road, I followed his account, like the restaurant's account, and he immediately was like, this sounds cool. How can I help you make this happen?
That's awesome.
And then it kind of just like, and then the pandemic happened. So that kind of put a bit of a wrench in everything. But then I was able to do the market at the FE Arts Collective, also up the road by Redbeard, in 2020, summer 2021.
Okay.
June 2021. I can't believe it's already almost been 2 years. It's wild. Yeah. And I remember being so anxious, being like, I hope people come. I hope it's going to be like, I hope like people make money. And it was overwhelmingly successful. Like, so many people came out. I remember me and like my friends who had tables next to each other were like, oh my God, there's so many people. Like, there's so many people here. And then after that, I was like, when are you doing the next one? When are you doing the next one? And then it just kind of became a regular thing, and I was hating my job. I was an essential worker during the pandemic. My employer was garbage. And I eventually just kind of like, I applied for a general leave because I was a union job, and they said no. And so I was just like, you know what, fuck this, I quit. Yeah. Give them like a week's notice. And then I got a job for Canada Post, kind of just so I could make money. As you do, yeah, as one does, as one needs to do. And then I kind of started thinking more and kind of daydreaming more about a space. And I had done well enough at the markets, I kind of had a bit of a savings. And then I got my tax return.
The joys of entrepreneurship and tax returns.
Well, this was before I had the entrepreneur status. I'm scared to do my tax return this year. But yeah, so I got a good personal tax return, and then I found this space. This painting here was already here when I viewed the space. And so I was like, I have to. Yeah, this was made for me.
It's a sign.
Yeah. So I just kind of was like, you know what? Like, I'm almost 40, like, let's just go for it. Yeah. I moved in with my parents kind of like the fall prior to getting the space. So it was just kind of like, hey, Mom and Dad, like, I'm going to have to live with you for a little bit longer. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. But yeah, but you know, they're very supportive of me kind of pursuing my creative interests, and they're very proud of me now. So Yeah.
Following your passion.
Yeah. And what I'm inspired by, like I'm inspired by literally everyone around me.
Yeah.
You know, all the people that I collaborate with, like whether it's you or, you know, the makers or like other businesses just trying to make Kamloops kind of like a cooler place to live.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think being queer has had either a positive or a negative impact on the business in any way?
I would say overall positive.
Yeah.
Net positive for sure. There are not a lot of queer spaces in Kamloops, as you know.
I mean, there's not a lot of queer spaces in many communities, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
absolutely.
And so, like, yeah, the queer community is a very underserved community. It's not my entire brand identity, but it's definitely like a guiding force behind it and ensuring that there is a safe space for queer people. I mean, Kamloops, as I've said to you prior to recording, Kamloops is 3 farm towns and a trench coat.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, there is some of that pushback, but I haven't really personally, like my business hasn't been targeted or anything like that, thankfully.
You haven't experienced like discrimination or anything like that?
No. No, except for, I mean, I can tell you one story. Back in September when there was those anti-soji protests, there was a bunch of people obviously planned a counter-protest.
Right.
And being a visible queer business, I decided to use my platform to amplify that because, you know, I don't have I'm not an influencer by any means, but I do have over 1,000 followers on Instagram.
You got a voice.
And I got a voice, and I'm going to advocate for my community, especially the queer community. And I'm an auntie, so I feel protective. And I also feel protective over my younger self that, you know, didn't have that language and didn't have that voice to, you know, express my own queerness. So I feel kind of like it's like protecting my inner child at the same time. And someone who was a vendor for the night market incorrectly and falsely named me as the organizer of the counter protest and named my business to Freedom Kamloops. Fuck them, by the way.
Yeah.
You don't have to cut that.
No, I won't.
Yeah, they're a hate group, and
fuck yeah.
they. I was actually I first encountered them when I was volunteering for Kamloops Pride.
Okay.
They were protesting drag queen story time. I was initially supposed to be volunteering for Kamloops Pride, but I abandoned my post because I needed to counter protest. It was not. There wasn't really time for people to gather to counter protest, so I wanted my body to be there as well, and to kind of shield parents bringing their kids in. So that was my first encounter with those folks, and then so obviously when it came time to the anti-soji protests, I wanted to help.
Of course.
With that, and then so I was incorrectly named as the organizer for the counter protest, and unfortunately, that vendor was on a wait list for the Misfit Night Market, and all the vendors agree to the terms and conditions, which includes being a safe space for queer people.
Right.
So I had to ban that maker from the night market, like permanently.
You almost sound disappointed. I would have been like, fuck you.
I mean, yes, my disappointment and what kind of made me sad about it was that it was a mother-daughter, and I really I feel like the daughter is probably queer.
Gotcha.
And kind of gives me like helicopter mom vibes. So like, I feel for the kid.
Right.
So that's kind of where like that little bit of like sort of sadness comes in, because it's just
that.
like, you have a kid, man. Like,
yeah.
And you know, when I emailed her being like, hey, like, so it's been brought to my attention, you're naming me as an organizer, which is not true.
Yeah.
Yes, I will support my community. But do you really think that I have time to run a store, organize events, and organize a counter protest, like, and work a night job? Like, I'm not Beyonce.
Yeah. But even if you did, like, fuck you.
Yeah, yeah. And I like, and then and her only response was like, well, we shouldn't be sexualizing children. And I was just like, oh God. Like,
yeah, we all agree.
Yeah. I definitely had that was the first time running the shop that I did have a little bit of fear that my business was going to be targeted. You know, I'd drive past in the morning just seeing if like there was any vandalism or like my windows were spray painted or something. Yeah. But it's fine. I'm, you know, us queer people, we do have thick skins.
Well, we have to.
Because we have to. Yeah. Especially
so.
when it comes to bigots. So I'm not really afraid of them. And I carry pepper spray. So yeah, I might be little, but I have little dog syndrome.
Yeah. I was actually told by a cop who has worked with my dad that she's like, you should probably have bear spray in your vehicle. Because I was saying this, I don't know if this was after Thanksgiving, because we went to Castlegar on the drive home. We had a guy that did this down the road as we passed him in the vehicle. And we actually had it once coming into Kamloops for one of our shows. I think I've had it 3 times in total that I've had this vehicle. And I was just like, that's usually the worst that they do to us is like give us the finger or, you know, tell us to fuck off. Or
that's
like
okay.
whatever.
I give a finger to any time I see a Canadian flag on a car. So not that I've ever been a fan of the flag anyways. No. I think like patriotism's super weird. But yeah, now that I like, yeah,
it's just a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
So pulling it back onto the entrepreneurial side, I'd love to talk a bit more about what you find has been like the biggest challenge for you as an entrepreneur.
What did I put in my notes? Honestly, the biggest challenge has been just like going for it and trusting myself. And being broke all the time. Because I'm not I'm not taking a wage right now. I'm trying to kind of reinvest any money that I would take into the business. And also just like the other challenging aspect has been just like the financial side of it. I am a creative person through and through. I am numbers. I failed math in high school. So like, and I took an accounting class when I was in college. And I barely by the skin of my teeth passed it. So
some software can help with that, make it easier.
Software helps.
It's never.
But yeah, that I feel like the numbers side of it has been like the biggest challenge beyond anything. Like for me, I'm just kind of like, I just want to run my shop and.
Well, that's most entrepreneurs, right? You just want to focus on the fun stuff, but you don't all think about the other stuff like, you know, liability and accounting, and banking, and those other pieces that are crucial to run a business, but they're almost sometimes the annoying side of the business, right? They're not the fun side of it.
They're not the fun side. And when you're kind of more like, I guess, like right-brained, if that's even a thing, like, I recently found an accountant who's like close to my age, you know, plays in a local band. So I'm kind of like, okay.
They get me.
You will understand me. Please be my accountant. And also please recognize that I am dumb as a rock when it comes to this kind of stuff.
And don't overcharge me, please.
Yes.
Be kind. Be kind.
Yeah. My budget is very, very slim. So.
As you will see when you do my books.
Yeah, exactly.
Mine helped me with some creative stuff lately. Like, cash flow's tight.
Yeah. And just trying not to like spread myself too thin too. Like, you know,
that's what entrepreneurs do, isn't it? We always stretch ourselves too thin.
Yeah. And like doing it all myself as well. Like this is a one-woman show. So I try not to take on too much or like burn myself out or like slip into, you know, a relapse with my mental illnesses or anything like that. Yeah, the joys of owning a business and running it. So let's go back. Let's talk a bit more on the fun side again. Okay.
Let's not go too far down that path. Do you have a memorable time in the past of a real success or achievement that you've achieved with the business that you would like to share?
I didn't win, but I was nominated for the Kamloops Business Excellence Awards.
Amazing.
Like
Congrats.
right before I I think it was like, I don't even know if I was open all the way yet. But I was nominated for inclusive leadership. And out of all the categories to be nominated for, I think that one was the one that I felt most honored to be nominated for. I didn't win. But
sometimes it's just the fact of being nominated, right? Especially because
it's just an honor.
You're often shortlisted, right, from a larger list. So even to say that you're kind of top 3, it just made me think you should look at the Canadian LGBT Chamber of Commerce, CGLZC. I won the Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2020.
Cool. Congrats.
So thank you.
Oh,
and actually, we just won an award in Vernon last week for Drag Bingo for a new event for Vernon Winter Carnival.
Amazing.
Didn't even know there was awards, but we won one. We just got a picture from the awards. I just got home from Vegas, was at home. And I was, I think, working or whatever, but we got a group text message from friends that were at the award ceremony. We're like, oh, well, that's fun.
Oh, that's so
The first
awesome.
event that's ever won an award.
Yeah.
So.
And then the night market was actually nominated for Best of Kamloops, and we got 3rd place.
Amazing.
So that was pretty
Congrats.
cool.
Yeah,
especially
great.
since we are kind of more of a niche market.
Yeah.
But honestly, even opening my shop is like the biggest point of pride. Getting to
Yeah.
this point, it's just,
'Cause
it's wild to
I
me.
think you mentioned, but how long have you been open for?
I opened in June of last year. So
Okay.
June 2020,
So coming up on a year.
2023. Coming up on a year.
The first year's always the hardest. Yeah. And then, and for us, it was like then throwing the pandemic after you get through the
Yeah.
first 2 years, and it's like, but
Yeah.
anyway. Do you do any specific marketing or promotion towards the queer community?
Kind of.
I mean, we got Kamloops Pride stuff in here, so that's obviously, that would be an easy draw.
Yeah, it's more, the marketing I tend to do is more in terms of the products I carry.
Right.
So, you know, not everything in the shop is geared towards the LGBTQIA community. But I do bring in things, like I just got in these cute like skull stickers that say I support trans wrongs.
Trans wrongs?
Trans wrongs, you know, trans rights.
Oh, okay. I was like, I haven't heard that one. I was like,
It's kind of
sounds
cheeky.
fun.
It's from a queer business,
Yeah.
queer-owned business as well. I thought it was kind of cheeky,
That's
so
fun.
I try to bring in
I like
like
it.
cheeky, fun little things, and then also too, like typically throughout, with the night market previously, we did do 2 Pride night markets.
okay.
One was Here and Queer was our first one, and then the other one was Pride Was a Riot.
Nice.
But I think this year I'm going to not do a Pride market because I want the Kamloops Pride events and the Pride Week events and the festival markets to kind of be a bigger thing. So, but yeah, it mainly all my marketing that is like queer focused will be more like if I bring in products or you know, support other queer makers.
Yeah. Love it. Have you found the queer community supportive?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I find that's a pretty typical answer we get is, I think most of us queer people prefer to support other queer
Yeah.
business. It's just sometimes you don't know that it's a queer-owned business,
True.
right? Especially there's so many out there, whether it be restaurants or something I was thinking of, even like in the professional field, sometimes real estate accountant, like you don't always know. Like even if they sponsor a Pride event, it's like doesn't mean they're queer.
You're
It
right.
often means they're an ally or you know, a friend in a sense, but you really don't know. So it's nice to be able to support businesses and hopefully, you know, podcasts like this can help bring awareness to more rad queer people out there.
There's also a, I don't know if you've heard of it, but Everywhere is Queer. It's a new, like, I guess, like map app. You should add new rebellious unicorns to it. But it's basically just like a map of queer-owned businesses throughout Canada and the U.S. Actually, I think it might be worldwide.
Okay.
But yeah, but I mean too, like, I think that being a queer-owned business, you don't have to cater your products specifically. Like, you know, you don't have to sell stuff that's rainbows all the time,
totally.
right? Like,
Yeah.
like I have I have a friend who's a local artist. She's Shaquetmic, and she does sometimes do traditional art, but her art is not like traditional Indigenous.
Right.
But that doesn't make her any less of an Indigenous artist,
not.
right? So, like, just because, you know, not everything in my shop is, like, queer-coded,
Yes.
it's still very much a queer business,
Of course.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there any other queer initiatives or organizations that are really near and dear to your heart?
None that I support as, like, a business, just kind of, as I mentioned, the budget.
Yeah. Well, it can be time, right? It doesn't always have to be financial.
Yeah, but I definitely like emotionally and spiritually. Like, I mean, I feel like there's so many queer organizations that do deserve support. Rainbow Railroad is
Popular one, yeah.
Yeah. and I forget what it's called. I think it's called Essie's Place.
Oh, they're at a seminar.
Seminarm, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know. I've chatted with them in the past.
There, and even when I was in like London, there was a group called Queer Events that they kind of promoted a lot of events.
Yeah.
I used to donate to, oh my gosh, what one was it?
It's okay. I mean, that's a great list.
Yeah, like I think
there's
there's so many.
Oh, there are.
Which is kind of sad that they need to exist.
But I mean, even on the hate side of things, there's so many organizations, right? Because there's so many different ones that pop up because people don't agree with each other, or there's a segment of some group that's not covered, so another one comes up. So it's but everyone has like those groups that they are near and dear and that they work the most closest, and then it could be donating time, it could be donating space, it could be money, it could be any number of things. So
I would say locally, like Kamloops Pride would be the one that's near and dear to my heart. I know a lot of the board members. I know how hard they work to kind of bring events, not just during Pride Week, but throughout the year. And the fact that they've been able to pull together, I think they're on like their maybe 4th or 5th Pride ever.
Right.
I think at the time when I had moved to Kamloops, they had only had like 2 or 3 Pride events. So to me, that's just like...
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. And it's kind of wild to me that not until like 2018 or that it didn't even exist in Kamloops.
Totally.
That's pretty wild to me.
Vernon was just last year, was their first 2 years ago, first Pride, 2 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah,
we got a long way to go.
They're coming everywhere, which is great, right? We're popping up. Do you find being a queer-owned business that there's additional challenges that non-queer business owners face?
Probably. I think maybe, I mean, obviously discrimination is a big one, but even I think too, like maybe people not realizing that my space is for everyone.
Right.
I had this one customer come in, maybe it was like last week or the week before, and she comes in and she's just like, well, I'm straight. And I was like, that's okay. I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming up to me. And like, I was just like, there's something for everybody here. Totally. You just might not want the gay shit. I don't know.
Or maybe you do.
Or maybe you do. Yeah. Maybe you like it.
As you said.
Yeah. So I think, but other than that, but also too, I do have a lot of privilege as it is for being cis presenting, for being white, not so there is some kind of privileges that maybe I have that maybe don't create barriers, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, no, I feel like being a queer-owned business hasn't really, besides maybe, if people walk by and because I opened in June, right? So I opened Pride Month. Yeah. So I had like a witchy window and a super gay window. and I had a shirt that said protect trans folks. Yeah. And I do remember I would see people walk by and sometimes people would stop and read the shirt and they'd sometimes I would get a thumbs up through the window. Or other times I would just kind of see sort of a sneer. Yeah. And it's
that's the person that needs to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. But I'm also not here to make people comfortable. So.
No, exactly. Do you have any kind of legacy that you want to leave with the business?
I just want to make Kamloops weird.
Love it.
Yeah. Do
you have that on a shirt or hat yet?
No, but I should. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Or just keep Kamloops weird. Because I don't want to be good. I don't want the mega association.
Just wait till our one event comes out.
Oh, what? Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Well, it's actually not for here. It's for Enderby. We can say it. We're calling it mega. Make Enderby gay again. It was Ella's idea. It's great. I think it's great.
Slight troll too. I love it.
Yeah. And our next brunch here is going to be Just Jesus.
Just Jesus. Okay, I might need to close the shop for the day. But I think I even joked about that last time. Next time I'll close so I can have a religious. Sorry guys, right? It's a religious holiday.
Jesus is gay.
Jesus had 2 daddies.
All right, I'm gonna switch now. Lightning round.
Oh, okay.
It's just this or that. So whatever first comes to mind, that's what we say. You don't need to think about it. You don't need to explain it.
I'm kind of excited for this. Yeah.
It's nothing earth shattering. It's just getting to know you a bit better. So dinner at a fancy restaurant or home cooked meal.
Do I have to cook?
Just which is your preference?
Restaurant.
Multiple short vacations or one long one in a year?
Multiple short.
Mexico or Hawaii?
Mexico.
Spain or Portugal?
Portugal, because I'm Portuguese and I've never been.
Vancouver or Victoria?
I haven't been to Victoria since I was a kid, so I guess I would say Victoria because I haven't been there since I was a kid.
Okay. Early riser or sleep in?
I mean, I would prefer to sleep in, but I'm more of an early riser.
If you had a choice of just one or the other, both were an option, driving or flying?
Driving. I like a good road trip.
There we go.
Yeah.
Audiobooks or real books?
Real books that I collect and never read.
I think we all do a bit of that. Debit cards or credit cards for your business spending?
I have bad credit, so debit.
Do you deal with a bank or credit union?
I deal with a bank, but again, I have bad credit. So once that gets up there, I will be switching to a credit union.
There you go. Dogs or cats?
Cats, fully.
Spotify or Apple Music?
Spotify.
Are you a popcorn fan?
Popcorn?
Yeah.
Yes.
I find it's people either love it or they hate it, is what I find.
I mean, it's not my go-to snack, but yes, I would say I am.
Okay.
Specifically kettle corn.
Okay. Good to know. So this is just one or two word answers.
Okay.
Favorite type of music?
Punk.
I knew that was coming. We talked about it. Favorite time of the year?
Fall.
Favorite place to travel for vacation?
Japan.
Nice. All right, so I've got a few last questions to kind of wrap up the chat here today. How do you handle work-life balance and self-care as an entrepreneur?
That is a fantastic question, and I am still figuring that out.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I do because I will work evenings. The days that the shop is closed, I really do try to take at least one of those days to rest
and not work
and not check my emails. And
Good.
Sometimes I can't always do that, but I generally try to actually make time for myself and make time for rest and make time for my friends as well.
Great. I'm still learning how to do that.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process.
It is. Yeah, it really is. Can you share any tips or tips, tricks, strategies around building resilience as being an entrepreneur?
I mean, if you can afford a therapist. But I think, having people in your corner that will support you and that you can kind of lean on if you're having those moments of self-doubt are really important. And I would also say, in terms of like tips or tricks for any other queer entrepreneur, just kind of in general, get a good accountant and a bookkeeper.
Sometimes a lawyer.
Or a lawyer, yeah, sometimes a lawyer. And also, make sure that your business aligns with your values and that you're using your values to kind of lead yourself. I'm very idealistic, and I also kind of am I am not your typical business owner. For me, it's less about money and more about passion and values, and ideally, hopefully, I mean, the end goal is that I can support myself.
Of course.
Because
maybe you can hire some people to help you, right?
Yeah, that would be great. I don't want to hire until I can pay a living wage, which is, again, leading with my values, and that is going to be very difficult to do. But that's kind of when I feel like that would be a good measure of success, is if I can hire someone and pay them enough money to survive.
Yeah. And
Unlike
thrive.
other retail, retail is usually a minimum wage job. So I don't want to do that. I will work myself to the bone before I do that.
I feel you.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite books or podcasts outside of Queerpreneurs, obviously?
Yeah.
Cheat notes?
Yeah, I did. I was I wrote this one on my notes because I didn't want to miss any of them. Feel Good Retail was one that I listened to a lot. It's on Spotify, and it's basically just retail for the rest of us, with a focus on indie retail. It's an American podcast, so some of the things maybe don't really apply so much, but prior to opening, I was listening to them quite a bit. Yeah. Books, again, I collect books and don't read them, but the punk rock entrepreneur, I didn't write down the author's name, but okay. That one I found was basically like how to make money without compromising your values.
Amazing.
So that one was kind of good. Mentors part of that?
Yeah, I have that in it, but I've changed the question a bit. Okay. I mostly focus on books and books and podcasts.
Yeah,
so.
I don't listen to a ton of podcasts because
I don't listen to a ton.
I mean, when I'm in the shop, I usually just have music on.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to listen to a podcast while they're shopping. So.
I listen to more audiobooks while I drive if it's like if I'm driving solo. Yeah. So I feel. Yeah. And then my last question that I ask everyone is, for someone that's considering going down the entrepreneurial path, what type of advice would you have for them?
Get a good bookkeeper or have a business partner who's good with numbers. I would say lead with your values, kind of draft a good business plan. And then I would even suggest looking into programs like Futurepreneur, Community Futures. There are a lot of resources out there. Absolutely. I worked with Venture Kamloops to develop my business plan and got into their Accelerate program. And actually, I ended up doing a presentation in front of expert panel, and that's how literally having my business plan and everything prepared for that.
Amazing.
Helped me get my space.
I bet.
So it all kind of lined up.
Yeah.
And yeah, trust yourself. I mean, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Totally.
Yeah. But trust yourself, and then just keep in mind community over competition.
Right.
There's room for all of us.
Totally.
Even in a small town like Kamloops.
Yeah, right? That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any? That's kind of the interview for the podcast. But anything else you wanted to add or share while we have you on here?
I'm single. No, I'm just kidding. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, so you can follow House of Misfit on Instagram. It's Haus, like the French, German. I don't know. HAUS of Misfit.ca on Instagram and Facebook, and then Wonderful. Misfit Night Market also has its own Instagram account, Misfit Night Market on Instagram, and come by the shop if you're ever in the neighborhood, because it's lots of fun, and I do take music requests, so you don't have to listen to my music all the time.
That's fair. Awesome. Well, it was great to have you on. I'm glad you'd reached out and did the submission, and then that I randomly popped in last weekend when we were here for brunch. I know. So it all worked out really well, and now we're going to go play some bingo. And
I hope I win.
Yes, we've got some really fun toys. So, well, thanks again for being on Queerpreneurs Unleashed. Appreciate it.
Dustyn.
And thanks for tuning in to another episode of Queerpreneurs Unleashed. We will see you next time.
Thank you.